So Black History Month, a time to reflect, to celebrate, to acknowledge. And in doing those things, we sometimes have to dispel versions of a story that has already been taught and add truth. And joining us this morning to add that truth is Democratic strategist Kristal Knight and a senior fellow at the Brookings Institute, Dr. Rashawn Ray. And Rashawn, history is subjective. It is his story, his version, your version, and mine. But now we're actually being asked to forget about it and not even teach blackness in schools. And I was watching all of the networks this morning, and guess what? Even Black History Month is being glossed over.
You know, Dale, look, the simple way to think about this is that Black empowerment is threatening because it disrupts the status quo of white supremacy. And we know that the United States of America was founded on white supremacy. Part of telling that truth means that a majority of white people now have to rethink about their own legacy. And as we think about this moment that we're in, where historically Black colleges and universities, which I think are some of the biggest beacons of hope, some of the biggest ways that we should think about thriving and surviving in America, are receiving death threats in 2022, when we think about how that harkens back to what was happening in the 1950s and 60s, as we were aiming to integrate, we have to continue to center Black history, because if we don't tell our own history, no one definitely will tell it for us.
Kristal, always one step forward, one step backwards. We celebrate the names like Martin and Malcolm and Rosa, and now we're putting them on quarters, but we forget, guess who's on the other side of that quarter? The white president, George Washington, who once owned slaves, and his descendants and the descendants of Thomas Jefferson are still trying to find out what happened to them. Our stories still aren't being told.
Well, Dale, that's great. You're right. They're not being told because we're not the writers of history. And, there's an African proverb that states that, if the lion doesn't, can't write his own history, then he'll always be, the story will always be told by the captor. And so that's absolutely what has happened in American history. That's what happens with Black history. And that's what happens with the retelling of our stories. We're not the ones that are writing the books. And the books that we do write, the history that we do tell, like the 1619 Project, like, works by Toni Morrison, those are beginning to come under attack. Those are being banned because of critical race theory. And so what we see, which is what we've seen throughout the history of America, is, white folks continue to move the goalposts. They say, first you have a week, then you have a month. Now you can't teach this. Now you can't teach that. And so again, if we're not educating the future generations that are coming behind us, they won't understand how far our history and how deep our history truly is and how rich our history is based upon the African continent, because those who are writing the books and are teaching the classes are attempting to erase our history over and over again.
Rashawn, I am what is called a blurred. I was one of the few historians who would actually be spending hours upon hours at the National Archives. But the truth is there are very few Black historians, and those who exist are actually ignored. The new whites-only drinking fountains are really the layer upon layer of legal restrictions over what can and can't be shown or said. And the guardians of our papers and our airwaves don't exactly fit the Rosa Parks mold. They're not willing to take those bold steps to tell stories that have to be told, even though there might be some personal pain.
I mean, you're exactly right. Look, when it comes to historians, now, again, I'm an academic, right? So there are several that I think about. One in particular at Harvard University, Khalil Muhammad, who ran the Schomburg Center in New York. He was one of my mentors at Indiana University when he was an assistant professor, and I was a PhD student there. But then, of course, when we go throughout history, when we think about poets, we, of course, know people like Langston Hughes, but we should also know people like Countee Cullen. So when we think about our history, part of it has to center on us, not just telling an oral history, but also a written history and an archive where we create and house our own materials. Part of what that means is every person, what they should do is pull out their phone, hit the voice record, and record the oldest living relatives in their family. Just ask them tons of questions. I did this recently with my mother. I'm going to do it with my grandmother. There are just a series of legacies that we know that exist in our own families. And there is a lot that we can learn because, again, that empowerment See, that's what the threat is. The threat is the empowerment. The threat is that we will no longer be submissive and subversive to what is happening in the United States of America, even in an era where supposedly we've had the most progress than we've ever had. We see how quickly that rolls back and that it actually can get reversed.
Kristal, not only is Black history not being taught in schools, they're trying to reverse Black history at a time when we don't even know how much Black history we've already missed. We think about things like critical race theory, in which they say that not all of America was based on racism. No, it wasn't. But it was based on the racism that brought our ancestors here in chains. And it was also bought on the racism, founded on the racism that killed off so many Native Americans. Those things are facts. They won't go away. And yet those facts are uncomfortable for white Americans.
Absolutely. You know why they're uncomfortable for white Americans? Because this country is getting browner. As we speak, every year our country begins to have a more brown-like population. And so what that means is the threat of whiteness is diminishing. The power of whiteness is diminishing the more Black and brown people, fulfilled or, integrate into this country and are born into this country. And also the more that Black and brown people begin to take hold of power, take hold of elected positions and seats and offices, and begin to speak up. What we saw, at the uprisings of 2020, post the killing of George Floyd, was a quote unquote racial reckoning, if you will. And so we saw folks, even some of our white counterparts, speaking up about Black issues. But now we're in 2022 and we're talking about banning books in schools. And so again, we have moments in time where we have great progress for racial, equity or racial reckoning, but then the goalpost gets moved. And so that's just one of the old tried and true tricks of white supremacy, is to, have it in the forefront for a little bit about, racial equity, and then you move it because it's uncomfortable. It makes people feel that they are guilty for the sins of their fathers or the sins of their grandfathers or the sins of their wretched history, if you will. And so this is not something that's surprising. It will continue to happen again and again until we control the narrative and really can have a say-so in what is being taught and what is being shared.
Rashawn, speak to the history that is now being destroyed or is no longer accessible. When I was at the archives, for instance, there were literally bins of 78s, which actually preceded albums, which preceded, by the way, cassettes and DVDs and all the other things for those of you that are looking at ancient history, but also the film collections of everything that African Americans did. They didn't have enough room to store them anymore. And many of those films were being destroyed because they couldn't get them transferred over to digital databases soon enough. And as a result, our history was destroyed. For instance, if you've never seen the Nicholas Brothers tap dancing, you've never seen the greatest moment in entertainment. And yet most people don't know that. How much of our history has disappeared?
Tons of our history has disappeared, and tons of our history is unknown. You talked about these archives. Librarians have been talking about this for years, that documents, that archival materials are being destroyed. They are supposedly being digitized, but they actually aren't. They are simply being destroyed. And so what we have to do is we have to work to preserve those. A lot of us can remember growing up, going to libraries, checking out books, just going through tons of documents. That doesn't exist in the same way. And even though supposedly in a digital environment, in a social media environment, people are getting this information, they're actually not. They're getting a sanitized, highly politicized, highly racialized version of the truth. And part of what this harkens back to is that, look, a lot of people know this, including white people, particularly those in power. What they realize is that what they're trying to do now is disrupt the knowledge that people are gaining, the truth setting process. They are also thinking about the fact that supposedly whites are going to be in the numerical minority. Of course, that only is set up if we compare whites to non-whites. If we compare whites to all the other racial groups, they will still be far the majority at roughly 50% or more. They're about 65% now. Now, part of thinking about that process then is that they understand that inequality is not just about economics, it's about social and cultural life, and that's what they're trying to preserve.